Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Start the meeting by public comment. Is there anyone in the room wishing to address the county board? Good morning.
Good evening.
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 I'm sorry.
I just wanted to come over and take a second to introduce one of our newest deputies that we just hired. He started last Monday. Today's Tuesday, so we still got him yet. I told him to come up and just say a couple words kind of about himself and just kind of introduce himself to the board. Casey McCready is his name. But
All right. Thank you. Yes. Casey.
Are you Jim's son?
Was that?
Jim McCready?
No, I'm not. No.
You traded blue uniform for brown.
Okay.
So.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm Casey McCready. 37 years old. I've been in Winona County from St. Charles my whole life. I got a wife, 2 kids. Been in law enforcement now for about a year and a half, so excellent jump. I'm happy to be here and hopefully make it a career here.
All right.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff, for bringing him over. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else wishing to make a public comment? Seeing no one coming to the podium, we'll move on to approval of the county board minutes from June 12th.
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Commissioner Pomeroy, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi. Any? Yeah, I'm hearing voices. Everybody chimed in on that one. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Meeting minutes approved. Item number 4, acknowledge receipt of the approved committee minutes from the Land Records Committee, April 6th.
Move to acknowledge.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Pomeroy to acknowledge the Land Records Committee from April 6th. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Approved and acknowledged. Consent comments and approval of the agenda. Mr. Fritz?
Just a question. Did I miss the call to order of the Board of Appeals and Equalization to approve the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
We were talking. Okay.
We approved. Do you need?
Oh, it's 6:45.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think-
We'll talk about that at your
I was doing something else.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Ms.
Just wanted to
Holte-
make sure. Okay.
Ms. Holte took detailed
Thank you.
minutes. No, Ms. Holte took
you.
detailed minutes of that
Okay.
meeting, so she got that
Another
going.
room.
Okay, all right. So, any?
Nothing on the consent agenda.
Okay. Commissioner Kavesi? Nothing. Commissioner Pomeroy? Commissioner Olson? Commissioner Jacob?
I'd like to pull item 6.7.
Okay, 6.7, so we'll make that general business.
Well, it is,
Which,
no.
no, it's
Okay.
not, so, it'll come after, so 7.0, we'll make it 6.7. All right, Attorney Sonneman?
I have a brief, little short presentation on the Jail Advisory Committee Outreach Subcommittee activity.
Okay, all right. We'll add that, and I have nothing at this time. So with that, motion to approve the amended agenda?
Second.
Motion to approve the amended agenda by Commissioner Pomeroy, second by Commissioner Jacob. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Mr. Fritz, if you'd read the consent business into the record, please.
All right. Consent business. Department recommendation 6.1, approve legal services retainer agreement with Briel and Benson Law Firm and Motley Rice Law Firm regarding the opioid litigation matter. 6.2, approve LG 220 gambling application for exempt permit Pickwick Mill Inc. 6.3, approve monthly resolution. 6.4, approve purchase contract with Driftless Region Vector Control LLC for mosquito abatement services. 6.5, approve County Road 109 culvert replacement with $115,000 of funding from sales tax. 6.6, approve 50% county cost participation to contract First Street Southwest approach to CASA 33 in Utica with funding from sales tax. 6.7 has been pulled. 6.8, confirm payment of disbursements.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Pomeroy, second by Commissioner Jacob to approve the consent business as presented. Any further discussion? Just a quick comment. We have 2 projects that we've been able to fund in part because of the sales tax, the half-cent sales tax. So that is good for those updated projects, which probably wouldn't have been done. So that is a benefit to our traffic and our highway engineer being able to do those projects to take care of issues. Collapse culverts can be dangerous. And we're probably going to have a lot more of that type of work that needs to be done. So thank you to Dave Kramer and his staff for bringing those things forward.
We also have a person to be introduced related to 6.4. I don't know when you wanted to do that, Jill.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, all right, all right.
We were just sitting quietly.
A new mosquito man?
Right, this is Joey Ritz, I always say that. Right. He worked with LaCrosse County and Vector Control and Dave Geske for the work that we've been doing for a couple of years here, and he knows the system. He'll be doing what we had contracted with LaCrosse County for, so we're glad we could find someone. It's kind of the same thing. They've got other counties and cities that are also going to be doing it, so it should work out just fine like we've had in the past. So here he is. If you see him on the property, you'll know who he is.
All right, okay.
Do we call you if we get bit by mosquitoes, or?
Maybe, but we're developing some new handouts that he's going to take to the properties and, just reminding people about encephalitis and West Nile and also some tick information. So, it's also an educational piece that we'll be able to do at all the properties that he goes to canvas.
Well, I think we have plenty of standing water.
Yeah, question, Jill, with tires you'll see that will be holding water, will that report, as far as within the city limits, still get turned over to the city?
When the city is also contracting with him, so
So
they'll
they'll
have
get
their
it.
own. But
All right.
I've talked with Lucy, so we're on the same page.
Right.
But we'll get that, and then also the ones, for out in the county and the small cities that we'll be having him take a look at. That's the main focus is the tires, any kind of containers or water holding, and he's the expert on this. So, yeah.
Basically anything like that can hold water, that artificial habitat that can hold the mosquitoes that are more likely to carry the diseases that we're targeting. That's what I'm kind of looking for.
Yeah, we can't get rid of all the mosquitoes, unfortunately.
Darn.
Other years, I think is different types of invasive pests. We've had aerial spraying. Is there going to be any?
Oh, no.
That
he
was
doesn't
gypsy
do that,
moth.
so they don't treat like that. I think that the DNR has been doing some of that on different pests like you're talking about, and I haven't heard you.
Minneapolis is.
Gypsy moth, they used to spray.
Yeah, that might be, but that,
Not part of your program.
right, no, they won't be doing any of that.
All right.
Okay, all right,
Great.
Well, thanks for helping us out.
Thank you.
all right,
Yes.
thank you. So the motion has been made and seconded to approve the consent business. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, consent business approved. 6.7, approve amendment to the Mississippi River La Crescent Watershed Activities Agreement. Commissioner Jacob.
Okay, yeah, so I had a couple of questions on OFK, or Sheila or Emily, or all three of you could come up and answer a couple questions. So it said, I read, there's 156,011 of the 203,000 would go for consultancy work. What would the balance go for?
Yes, and that's from the total grant amount from beginning to the extended end date. And some of that was going through to the U of M and then also to New Ground, which is Nancy North. So those are the consultants that were involved with this grant.
So, same question I always ask. No programs on the ground out of the 200? No erosion control structures, grass waterways
No,
out of that 203,000?
The purpose of this grant is for RAPS development, watershed restoration and protection strategies. None of those funds go to practices that are on the ground. This is for developing the plan, developing the strategies, and then identifying what are the practices that will work here to identify, to address these water quality impairments or to protect what we have that's already in good shape. So it is intended, the monies that are for this grant from the PCA are by statute designated for RAPS development or for the watershed approach. So it's in a separate pot by itself. There's another pot for practices.
Okay. On page 69 of the packet, there's a paragraph that's crossed out that says essentially key leaders will be identified by local staff for qualitative interviews. These will include initially one county commissioner from each county, township, and city officials within the watershed. Goes on to list others, but those are elected officials. And it's replaced with highlighted language that says key leaders will be identified, may include landowners, independent citizens, engaged in water advocacy. It seems to replace the elected members with non-elected members. So can you maybe elaborate on that or explain that to me?
Well, when we were doing the amendment, they asked us to go through and if there were any adjustments to be made with any of the objectives. So that's what that came from. I don't think it was, and Nancy already has been meeting with elected officials in the La Crescent watershed, so it's not like they were not, electeds were not being excluded in that.
But the amended language looks like electeds are taken out of it.
Well, I can certainly put them, they have been talked with. I mean, she has made that connection with the city
I'm
officials.
thinking, more than county commissioners would be specifically our elected soil and water district representatives seem like they should be the first go-to people, and then I would
Sure,
think
definitely.
County
I agree.
should be part of that as well. So I would prefer to see electeds
Okay.
be part of it.
Well, wouldn't they be the key leaders? Excuse me.
Well,
As members of
Commissioner-
local boards.
Commissioner Olson.
Sorry. I don't know, if the key leaders identified for local interviews, would that fall under that?
It explains which ones it would be. Key leaders will be identified, and then it goes on.
May include.
May include, yeah.
Doesn't say will include.
So the previous one specifically stated city officials and county commissioners. I think it goes without saying that soil and water district elected officials who are elected for the purpose of soil and water representation should be part of that. And then I wouldn't exclude county commissioners or elected city officials if they're, if it's significant to their city.
Yep. And I might add, the work that's being done, this is an amendment, and Nancy has been contacting elected officials with this, in this capacity.
What area, again, remind me the geography of this particular, so what counties and cities are you covering?
Okay, Houston County and Winona County.
Right, only but only a portion of, yeah, I remember,
Not all of Winona County.
right.
So the La Crescent watershed is the southern portion of Winona County, Pine Creek area, just north of the Dakota, I believe.
It's on the second page of this handout.
Blue and orange. Everything except for the Root River?
I was going to mention too, if you read on in that paragraph, it talks about also including members of local boards or local governments too. So.
And it specifies local boards associated with water management, so.
But I'm offended. I live in that, and I haven't heard from this lady.
Oh.
Anyway, I think Commissioner Jacob, you had some other concerns?
Yeah, so then on page 72, it discusses 6 and 7 were added, and number 7, up to 2 volunteers will be fully educated on local water issues and can be leaders in engaging and informing citizens. So fully educated, who's doing the education, and are they in our water planning department? Where are these people?
Well, the idea is to get local citizens to be involved. And I can give you an example. It would be like the Citizen Stream Monitoring Program or the Lake Monitoring Program. Both those volunteer monitoring networks are under the PCA. And so volunteers are trained how to do monitoring, and they go periodically out to their designated spot and monitor. So that's kind of an example of what we're looking for. But in this capacity, we're looking for people to be helping to assist with public participation meetings and becoming well-versed on the watershed approach and what that means for the local entities. And the watershed approach is in, I can show you in the handout.
But this
This
handout, you were going to come, this says July 26th. So this is something you were going to present to us in July?
No,
It does say July
oh,
26th.
I'm sorry, it's June.
Yeah.
Sorry, my typo.
Okay, so we haven't seen this document
No,
before. Okay.
no, I just thought, I want to be able to show a picture of the watershed, just in case things get pulled, and so I'm able to explain where it is. But on this page, I just went through the watershed approach. The watershed approach is happening in every watershed in the state of Minnesota, and the PCA is overseeing that. And all 80 watersheds, each one is in a different phase of this watershed approach. The La Crescent watershed began its intensive monitoring, which is the first stage, or the step one of the watershed approach. So they did that for 2 years, and then that was followed by an assessment of this data to determine if there were any water quality impairments. Now that report is finalized this year. And the end of 2019, we'll be developing the RAPS, which is the Watershed Restoration and Protection Strategies. So just identifying, based on all of these water quality impairments, what are the strategies that are used to address these water quality impairments. And that's where we really need help from the citizens to determine, based on the data, on the science, this is what the situation is. Now, what are the strategies that we can do to improve it or to protect the waters that are already not impaired? And then, you can have the whole list of all the what, and then the how part of it is, okay, these are the strategies, which ones make sense to us here in this locale? So that's kind of the whole process. We want to get people involved and try and identify what is feasible for this area or for the La Crescent area.
So when you say on a watershed approach so this is Bowser that is implementing RAPS?
PCA.
Okay, so
PCA
PCA.
does the monitoring. They do
So
the,
they're working on a watershed basis.
all the agencies are.
Regardless of whether the county has adopted watershed planning in that area.
Correct. They are doing,
So what's really our input on, we did adopt the Root River Watershed 1 plan. This
Right.
would be the remainder of the county that would be in the other watershed within our county. But we haven't taken any action.
no, we haven't.
And in fact, it was brought before Soil and Water, and they said they wanted to wait on it.
Yes.
So the PCA is moving ahead as though the counties are adopting it, whether the counties.
Whether the one watershed, one plans are adopted anywhere in the state, regardless of all that, the PCA is doing monitoring on a watershed basis. Before, and I had this slide before, but on this slide, that I had this on a presentation on the July 20th, whatever, last year. But anyway, this is the slide that I showed before to this board, showing the PCA when they were doing monitoring. Before they adopted the watershed approach in 2008, before they did that, they went to a stream reach and monitored it, and then assessed it, and then developed the TMDL, and then moved on, or one lake at a time. Well, as of 2008, they decided this doesn't make sense. We call this our 100-year plan. It's going to take 100 years to do every stream reach and every lake in the state, and that wasn't efficient. So they decided we're going to do intensive monitoring in one watershed for 2 years, intensively monitoring it and identify what those impairments are, and then assess what is causing those water quality impairments, and then move forward into developing strategies. This happens irregardless of whether local entities are involved with one watershed, one plan. That can be a nice next step, but they will do that regardless, because it just makes sense and it's more efficient for them to do a watershed at a time, assessing it and monitoring it, and then developing those TMDLs. So the monies for this grant are to help local entities to get the participation that they need from the citizens to help develop these watershed strategies, and then developing, and then finally implement. It doesn't make sense for a state agency to come up with their strategies and then come up with the implementation plan if there's no input from the local entities. So that's what this part of the grant is all about.
Okay, go ahead.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Is it fair to say that the One Watershed program takes a look at the water as a system, regardless of the geography? Okay, and that's why it crosses county boundaries, it crosses all kinds of boundaries, which is a different approach for us. So the planning has to involve a little more complicated program of getting the right people together at the right times and making those decisions.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
But we're not contingent on anything that bordering counties are doing in this watershed, right? I mean, so her question was about how watersheds don't follow county lines.
Right.
This is not contingent on what Wabasha or Houston County are doing. This is just within Winona County, or is this within 3 counties?
No, this is within the La Crescent watershed,
Yeah, but
which is in Winona and in Houston.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So if we look at our colors, are we just talking this little orange
So
piece?
not the.
Okay, so we're not talking the white water. We're talking, on my map, just this little orange piece. We're going to
And
spend.
also it extends into Houston County too. So that map is of Winona County, which shows the Winona County portion of the La Crescent watershed, which is the orange.
So how many acres is this watershed? It's relative. It's much smaller than the
Oh, yes.
Root River.
Oh, definitely.
So,
Most of this watershed is in Wisconsin.
okay, so then I really have issues. But go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay,
We're not
Kavesi.
dealing with the Wisconsin part, I might add.
Okay.
I live in the Wisconsin side of this
Yeah, I know.
watershed.
I know.
Yeah.
And water doesn't follow state lines either.
If you look at the map that's multicolored, it shows this watershed district as green. Is that correct? Those 2 green parts, but not the bottom green part, because that's Iowa.
Mine isn't black and white. but-
No, it's Mississippi La Crescent, not
Well,
Mississippi.
that green, yeah, it flows to the upper Iowa.
These 2, number 15,
No, just this one.
Just the
this
top
one. The
part,
green-
okay.
The one in the corner is Reno.
Yeah, see, that's enough. So it's just that tiny little, my neck of the woods.
Yep.
but it's that system, and you have to get the right people together to address the issues of that, which are different from the issues of any
There's
other
not a
system.
whole lot of people that, I mean, even population in that part is,
So Sheila, do you work in Houston County on this, or who works in Houston County?
They work
Well, we're
together.
working with Root SWCD on this project, and they know about it, and, so, but primarily we're working through Nancy, and she's making the connections with La Crescent people right now.
So do you work in Houston on it?
They work
Not
together.
personally, no.
So I guess back to one more question on the 2, quote, fully educated volunteers. So are they going to work full-time, or they're going to volunteer full-time, or how do they become fully educated?
We're looking for volunteers to help with the watershed approach.
So how do they become fully educated? It says fully
they have
educated.
to live in the watershed.
Well, this is where the watershed report, so they could be in La Crescent, or they could be elsewhere in Winona County, and I think primarily we're looking for people in the county, since we're having the fund money for their training to help with this process.
So how and where is their training done?
That I don't know.
To become fully educated, I'm thinking almost
That's
like
a PhD.
I'm thinking like
We got
they
PhDs
almost
that
gotta
can't
be
figure out the
two
water.
employees,
No.
except for they're not paid, which is, then we get, I'm in
No, they're
positions
volunteers.
before where we're asking people to do work and we're not paying them, and that doesn't go over well either.
I'm a volunteer for the stream monitoring program, and it takes, 15 minutes a week to go do it. I do it after work. So volunteer work can be full-time and it can be part-time, depending on how it works.
And how would a person apply for that position? How do we know who we're going to get?
Well, they would contact probably Kay Qualley and indicate their interest in being a volunteer.
Okay. I mean, I'm just, kind of trying to see, do we get someone who's interested in soil and water, someone who has a farming background? Do we have, I'm guessing that, it could become a political issue, and I'd like to know who we're going to put in those positions.
Mm-hmm. So you want to have input on who goes in those
No,
positions?
I'm asking you how it's done.
Okay. Well, I've not done this before, and I'm assuming that, this person would be contacted with Kay Qualley and identify their interests, and we hope to have that person be a good fit in helping with this project.
Me too.
Okay. This geography is very restrictive. I mean, if we're looking, it's southeast corner of Winona County. There's no major metropolitan. Dakota is the only, and La Crescent. So La Crescent is, 2,500 people? I'm guessing. I mean, Dakota is much smaller. And then you indicate, and I know that you're going towards these RAPs, and that's the program that would ultimately provide the cost share and the on-the-ground fixes, correct? I have difficulty seeing here specific outreach includes a video project focused on rain garden and storm best management practices, and then it talks about children. Somewhere in here it talks about educating children, which I don't think is totally a bad idea, but I'm not sure how. Yeah, I don't know for sure how making a video and educating children is going to lead to. I think Commissioner Jacob and I are all about what's going on the ground. We can talk about this. We have PhDs in water research that haven't been able to figure out the water stuff. I mean, we've been studying water for a long time, and this little island. I mean, it's so close to the Whitewater or the Root River. To spend this kind of money to do what you're asking to do, I just have difficulty. I know it's not our Winona County, but it is. It's all our money. It's because it's tax dollars.
Absolutely. And that's, why I can kind of explain, on a biennium schedule, so every 2 years, PCA, the division that I work in, gets X amount of dollars. And we have these watersheds on a staggered schedule. So we have X amount of dollars to spend on these watersheds in southeastern Minnesota. So now this year we have La Crescent. And while we have an active work plan and a contract, we have additional monies now that we've been able to free up to really invest some dollars in here to get a really robust plan written for this area of the state. And that's beneficial because, as you mentioned before, we have all these other moving parts like the Bowser One Watershed One plan, which can combine different watersheds into a larger area. But without having, a really good RAPS, a really good watershed plan, it makes kind of these higher level plans a little bit more difficult if you don't invest those dollars at this level to have a robust plan. So when you see stuff like training those 2 volunteers to do stormwater work, that might not, it's stormwater is an issue that we have to deal with, and it's specific to this area because Winona has some stormwater issues that we can address. And so I guess I'm trying to say is the more work we can do under this work plan in the area, that's a beneficial thing.
I've got one quick thing to add. Chairwoman Ward, the video project specifically with best management practices embedded within it, the concept was vetted through the SWCD, which voted to contribute to it, and it's under production right now. And it's meant for the rural areas, for town areas, as stormwater being everyone's problem and opportunity in small ways to correct. And it's turning out very well. Other partners have contributed to it, so it's a little bit nicer product than we originally were able to produce. And so being able to put the finishing touches on it with a little bit of a boost from this grant would be very useful, and it would also be the major project from our Green Corps member, who is also from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, so it's a nice tie-in with Emily's organization.
So which soil and water? Houston County? Winona County? Steve, did you approve that?
Yeah, we worked on video.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a yeah. Everything she says is well spot on, and it's a good video. I wouldn't have known from this presentation in here that video was part of it.
The same video.
When it talks about non-government organizations being involved in that, what non-government organizations do you see fitting into this educational program?
I can help with that. When I worked for the city of Fridley, one of the things that our Parks and Environment Commission did was work with the Freshwater Society and other groups like the university with master water stewards and master gardeners as sort of Uber volunteers that got a little extra training. And that turned out to be a very, very good thing. So we're envisioning something like that where water is the major, focus. But in the case of master water stewards, they are also able to work on volunteer projects for invasive species, and they could go out with crews to help get rid of oriental bittersweet, poison hemlock, and other things too, which is maybe not tonight's topic, but there's a little bit of ability to use these volunteers in that fashion. And to just wrap up, answering your earlier question on how these folks might apply or get in touch. We actually can post something on an internship website. We have people calling us that are retired, sort of like the SCORE business people that sometimes help out cities and counties and volunteer their time. So sometimes people come to us from a variety of sources.
Would you consider, would people who belong to Farm Bureau, would they have the opportunity to apply for one of these positions? And how would they know about it?
Again, we posted on the county's website for internships that we use through the personnel department here. That's what we have done for our university students and other kinds of Uber volunteers.
Would we put a residency requirement on that? There's a lot of resistance if somebody comes in from outside the area and you're going to tell me what to do with my land.
That would not be, excuse me.
So, I mean, is that under consideration, or is it because I haven't heard that concern addressed?
These positions would be for folks from Winona County, because the idea is that they would then continue to work with their friends and neighbors on these kinds of projects like stream monitoring, whether it's invasive species removal or going out with work crews, sort of a train-the-trainer situation. So it would not serve any of us well to have folks from outside the county coming in, because they're not going to stick around or they're just not from here. So that would defeat the purpose of what this is all about.
And Winona County is very broad and diverse, so I still have some true residency issues, but that's just one thing that I have. So I guess, if we're being asked to support this, but you said it would go on regardless. It sounded like you don't need our support.
We need the support, but when I talked about regardless, what I was talking about was MPCA's watershed approach throughout the state, regardless of one watershed, one plan. This is what they do. They monitor, intensive monitor, then they assess, and then identify what is causing those water quality impairments, and then identify Well, what's the list of strategies that work with these water quality impairments?
And is this Clean Water Legacy Funds?
Yes.
Okay.
So your approval tonight will basically give Sandra Sukla the authorization to then sign the amendment to the contract, which extends the date to June 30th, 2020, and adds another $27,500 to the contract. So that's what you would be.
So could we negotiate the contract saying we want the 203,391 to include $100,000 with best management practices on the ground? When do we get to that point?
When the RAPS is complete.
And when is that complete? What's our time? What are we looking at?
That will be published by the end of 2019.
Okay. And then when will the on-the-ground funding follow?
So then ideally what happens is that a group of local government units get together and put together a grant proposal to MPCA, get more clean water funding if they're interested in that, to fund then the implementation. What happens ideally is that when we reach that point, you guys would be ready for the one watershed, one plan, so that you can team up with more local government units, have more funding, and do more implementation all at the same time as a wider scale initiative. But that's up to whatever you guys.
I don't know if I buy into that because I sit on the one watershed, one plan for the river. Now, of course, we got allocated funds, and it's just available to those in that particular watershed. Nobody else. So you're, and again, don't take it personally or anything. You're telling me it's going to be more and bigger, but this has already gotten more. You know, the Root River, yes, got a chunk of money, but when you divide it over all the entities, it probably wasn't as. Didn't do any analysis, but it wasn't really any more money than normally would be coming. But at least at that point in time, there was money for on-the-ground application, you know, hopefully effective practices.
This pot of money for this grant is designated only for planning, no practices. There's a different pot of money for that.
Okay, planning. I don't mind planning, but you're doing videos to take out and show little kids. How's that planning? That's
education and outreach.
Right.
Yes.
And you just said this was for planning to do the RAPs. I don't see where the education isn't a bad thing, but you just said we need to get to, the urgency would be to get practices on the ground. I mean, we can make cute little videos and show color books and do everything to the kids, and they'll eventually someday be the landowners. But right now, what all I'm hearing is that people need practices on the ground if we're truly going to make any kind of difference in water quality and slowing this stuff down and things like that. So again, why are we spending some $203,000? Part of it's on this video that you just said we're making.
I think it's to identify the practices.
Right. And identify where those practices can go. You just can't randomly put practices anywhere. There are some places in the watershed that they are more effective than in other places. And so this is a part of that too.
So in all of this, how much ground can this one lady cover? How many, you can get out, there is a program, and I think, it's boots on the ground. It's farmers being led across their own ground with a, quote, more of an expert. So
Yes,
how many acres can this lady cover in?
Well, she's working with landowners in the La Crescent watershed. And another piece that she's working on is outreach with ag retailers. And that is geographically beyond the La Crescent watershed. And some of the things that they're focusing on right now is identifying farmers that are doing great things on their land and highlighting or showcasing them in periodicals like the Furrow magazine and some ag retailer specific newsletters. So just to kind of elevate the idea that, hey, everybody's doing this, and why shouldn't I? Just to try and encourage those who aren't to try and do this, because Joe Smith down the road is doing it, so let's try it. So there's a point where you need to kind of encourage good behavior, and that's what part of this is too. So part of what she's doing is beyond the La Crescent watershed. The ag retailers at southeast Minnesota.
And there aren't any ag retailers in that geographic area to speak of. Well, the co-op, I'm sorry.
Right.
Farmers Co-op.
Right. And also you mentioned, you were referencing the Field to Stream Partnership and the route. Earlier you talked about, was that Ron Miners that you were referencing?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
So, I mean, I guess I find much more applicable data and practices and buy-in from that practice than showing a video to a kid.
That's a different funding, yeah.
No, she said this was for the RAPS, and the RAPS is the plan to protect the water and the soil. It's, again, but they've thrown a lot of education into this. Commissioner Kavesi.
Just for my own information, before we got the Field to Stream project, which was its own separate set of money, did they have RAPs to indicate the need for that, or how did they determine that? That's another question. So,
Well, I know
it's
they did.
promoting best practices. That's, yeah.
Well, for the entire route was developed the PTM app, which is Prioritize, Target, and Measurable. So there was that app that was developed. So that was the entire route watershed that received that during the One Watershed, One Plan, identifying hotspots in the watershed where certain practices would be most effective. So they did have the benefit of that when they did the Field to Stream Partnership. But then they also did the field walkovers. And the three very small watersheds that they worked with in the route were the three geographic areas that were applicable to the route watershed. And then Ron Miners worked with the landowners. He knocked on every door and asked if he could walk the land with them and see if they could have any ideas.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ward triggered this when I started thinking, because when we have these RAPs done, they could lead to a project like that.
$200,000 later, yeah. I guess I would always like, and the people who study water, I mean, I think you would get, personally, a landowner and knowing a lot of landowners, if every little project had some practical, on-the-ground application, I think you would get more buy-in from the broader base of landowners. The people that have, that need the assistance and such to get it done. But there again, if MPCA and the higher minds can't see that that's a common, accepted practice, then we got more work to do.
And that's the basis of, this work, is that we have to identify those individuals. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of careful thought. Because we don't want to just spend money willy-nilly anywhere. We want to focus it to where it's needed, where people are going to do it, and where it's going to mean something to them too.
Oh, I think you have a lot of willing landowners if there's the right incentive to do it. Commissioner Jacobs.
So, I guess that exact statement I would have some questions about. Previously to, and Commissioner Kavesi reminded me of one more program, and I added it to my list. We're at 30 not programs, 30 different agencies now looking at water in Winona County. The frustration, and I've mentioned this how many times, the frustration with the targeted approach is that previously we took all the money and we gave it to the soil and water, and we dealt with all the willing participants. Now we're saying we're going to target areas, and if your property is not in the targeted area, you're not eligible for those funds. So we took a lot of money and put it into investing or into studying, and that's all money now that it will never make it to the ground. So I'm not convinced that targeting is better than working with all willing participants. And it's not like the Soil and Water District didn't know what to do with the money. They were installing grass waterways. They were building ponds, doing great work. But this is all, now we've got 30 more agencies competing with soil and water and creating their own hierarchy of employees to support. You look how many employees are employed by all those different agencies looking at water. So it becomes a frustration to me. And I do think, I agree with Commissioner Ward, programs are more palatable when they come with at least something being done on the ground. When it's 100% studying and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars for a small, portion of Winona County, how many more hundreds of thousands of dollars does it take to study the rest of the county? And then how many counties in the state, and how much can the taxpayer handle? So, I'm frustrated with a lot of it.
All right. Commissioner Olson.
Just to clarify, to get over the frustration, what we're asked to do tonight is to approve the amendment to the watershed agreement.
Correct.
Now, we can take our philosophical ideals and argue with the MPCA and how they're spending legacy money. But tonight, we're being asked to do this.
Yes.
With that, I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion made by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the amendment.
No, the motion. He didn't say amendment.
Motion
Actually,
approves the amendment to the Mississippi River Watershed Activities Agreement, 6.7.
6.7, yeah.
and it's actually as amended, as well as the amended associated contract for services.
Yeah, it's on page
Pending
56.
approval of county attorney as form.
Right,
Okay.
The language is on page 56.
yeah. Further questions?
Okay, so
Commissioner
the
Jacob.
the reason I was concerned about how that was stated is because I could probably support it if at least at a minimum where it says key leaders, that specifically elected soil and water district members are part of that statement.
Yep, that would be no problem.
Okay, so we need to amend.
I would, who seconded it? Would you I'll accept that
That's
amendment.
fine.
The key leaders definitely includes soil and water conservation
WCD.
of all, so you're talking Houston and Winona counties?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Just the ones who have the La Crescent in their jurisdiction, or all of them?
The ones
I think
that
the
they-
boards as
they-
a whole.
Yeah, they can pick and choose, and I would hope the people who actually represent that area
Yes,
would step
of course.
forward. I do have a question, though, because it was brought up on these, quote, because we've had issues in the past, and I have to ask Ms. Holte. These, quote, volunteers, are we going to have a problem internally or externally with,
Are they
liability?
being educated in the planning department, or are they being educated?
Office space, supplies, computers, the liability exposure I would be very concerned with, especially if they're out on the ground, walking around and doing things. And if there are they our responsibility? Are they Houston County's responsibility? Are they MPCA's responsibility? Whose responsibility would these people be?
I would need to sit down with the folks and talk through the details of how that would all work in order to determine the relationship.
Because we've also had issues with pay, right? Or you're saying they're not paid, but there is concern for compensation for volunteers within labor law. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I would like, when you do that, to look at the current volunteers, how they're covered for Master Gardeners and the Master Stream, because those programs have been in existence for a long time. I've been a volunteer for Master Gardener and never even thought about liability, but I haven't dropped a shovel on my foot or anything, so.
But now I'm sorry, that's through the University of Minnesota, correct? Master Gardeners?
It's the Master Volunteer Program,
Right,
yeah.
and then that gets into a whole other thing. If you're going out working with kids, if you're part of the university system, you have to be screened nowadays. Like if I'm a 4-H volunteer, I have to be screened that I'm not,
Predator.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, they take it very seriously.
And they should.
They have to,
Yeah,
yeah.
because there is, so, I mean,
Madam Chair, in terms of our invasive species volunteers and some grants that have come before this board recently, having a disclaimer signed and a waiver is another thing that I've also done in the past and that we are, modifying and are using right now. So that could be something, that we will work out with personnel.
Well, I'd like to put the onus on MPCA, being that they're the ones with the money and the deep pockets in this whole water discussion, that they should have the exposure and the liability versus even the county.
Well, these are volunteers that are going to be participating of their own volition, and so they really aren't going to be affiliated with any agency, nonprofit or otherwise. They'll be volunteers for themselves and for
I know a
this kind of
couple
water
good lawyers.
assessment. So.
Could I
Attorney
just
Sonneman.
speak to that? And this is something perhaps Ms. Holte and I could discuss with you, but I'm always concerned when people talk about signing a waiver, and actually that doesn't really completely obliterate a obligation or a liability. So I think we have to be real careful about that, and that's something that I think that Ms. Holte and I can discuss with you.
We'll get on the same page about that. It's just something that we've used in the past in city government, so I want to make sure that we.
Good intentions, but there's too many good lawyers out there.
Maybe Fridley does it, but we have to be careful.
Yeah.
But we have volunteers in other programs, and this wouldn't be too dissimilar. I guess that's just the point that I wanted to make. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. All right.
Okay, we vote on the amendment.
Okay, so we have to vote on the amendment to add soil and water conservation from Houston and Winona counties to be part of the key leaders. All those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries. Now back to the original motion to approve the amendment to the Mississippi River La Crescent Watershed Activities Agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Aye. I'll vote for it, but believe me, the message needs to be sent to your higher-ups, MPCA and such, that, we would like to see some changes in some of these approaches. Okay. Thank you, Emily. All right, any other, Attorney Sonneman, yes, you have a small, short presentation?
I have some that I forgot to mention, but
Okay.
Attorney Sonneman can go first.
Let's do the jail stuff, the fun stuff, huh?
I'm actually going to get up and speak at the podium. How's that?
All right.
We had our jail advisory committee meeting this morning, and it was, I think, our fourth, I can't remember.
The whole committee or a subcommittee? The whole committee.
Subcommittees are meeting regularly. But what I wanted to let the board know, and you can look at these after the meeting. We're going old school here, okay? No apps, no, for us baby boomers. Storyboards, and these are, as if anybody's been to a science fair, you've seen storyboards or helped your kids put those together. So one of the subcommittees of the Jail Advisory Committee is the Outreach Committee, or Subcommittee, and that is also merged with the CJCC's Outreach and Diversity Committee, so we're not reinventing the wheel. So there's a lot of that collaboration going on. Anyways, one of the ideas that we had in our committee to get the word out about the Jail Advisory Committee's work and to get education out there to the community as well as seek their input is to attend and establish some events. I don't know if any of you have been to a Know Your Neighbor event yet that Leighton Broadcasting is co-sponsoring, I believe, with the Rotary Club here in Winona. But one of our members had the great idea of joining that because they were looking for people to have booths. So we've had one Know Your Neighbor meeting where we've taken these storyboards. And the next one is Thursday night, June 28th at Lake Park at JC Pavilion from 5 to 7. And members of the Jail Advisory Committee and our subcommittee will be out there answering questions, engaging with the public, talking with them. And I'm trying to remember which storyboard. Has anybody seen the Chevy commercial that says, "Tell me what on this are true or false"? You've seen that commercial of a model of, a Chevy truck. So one of our members had the great idea of doing the same kind of thing with the jail. What is true about our jail, what is not, and I won't tell you the answer because that'll tell everybody what the answers are, but it's a good way to engage people. And the event at in earlier, I guess it was late May, May 28th. I wasn't able to be there because I was out of the country actually, but it was very well. It was down at East End Rec. Great, thank you, Jeff. Very well attended. People had lots of questions, comments. We also have a question box, a comment box that we're going to put together. So the Know Your Neighbors meetings are June 28th at the Lake Park, as I said, this Thursday night, 5 to 7. Then there's one in the Goodview Park, July 26th, same time, 5 o'clock. And then August 7th at the East End Rec, which combines with the National Night Out. And then we're also setting up at the Winona County Fair, July 11th through the 15th, and we'll be near at the sheriff's booth. And then I've tentatively reached out to the township officers so that we can have a presentation on their August 8th meeting. Steve Boswell, the jail administrator, is going to be doing that. And then on October 25th, we're having a community collaboration summit on the jail study. It'll be at the middle school commons, and it'll probably start at 6. We haven't got all the details yet, but what this really is doing is following the mission of what you established in the jail advisory committee. You established that to help the county understand the needs of the community as they relate to the jail, and I'm taking this off the website. So we did begin the work in January of 2018. And the mission, as is on the county's website, is to review alternatives to the current jail facility and related programs, including doing nothing, remodeling, continued reliance on regional partners, building a new facility or some combination thereof, and provide a written needs assessment as generally specified by the National Institute of Corrections to the Winona County Board of Commissioners, which then can be used as a foundation for facility program development. And so part of that is obviously going out and seeking public input on what the public, the citizens of Winona County, feel our needs are for a jail facility if we need a new one. And as we emphasized this morning at the meeting, and correct me if I misquote this, Administrator Fritz or Chief Deputy Mueller, what we're doing is a needs assessment. We're not planning a jail at this point. So these boards, this, as I said, old-fashioned, but it's really, again, a good way of getting people to start thinking about what we have at our current jail. You know, most people don't think about the jail, you know. But so this is our way of engaging the public and doing that outreach, boots on the ground, right? So if you have any questions, I'll stay afterwards. Maybe Jeff will too. And this is kind of taken from our trip to the Goodhue County Jail. We took a tour of that, and then there's some comparisons between our jail, Goodhue, and Houston County. So, and that's what some of these pictures represent.
Thanks. All right. So this is, when you say jail, that's a very specific place. Mm-hmm. So will you have more storyboards that talk about the system? You know, you're kind of reviewing the whole criminal justice system in Winona County, not just the jail.
We're identifying needs, both programming needs and facility needs, right? And in fact, this morning we had more. We're taking a really good measured approach, I think, with our facilitator, and it may be slow, but it's comprehensive. And so some of the and they're on the website if you want to look at the agenda and the materials for the meeting that was this morning. What is on there now is jail population, average jail stay, things like that. And so I've asked the work group that I've which includes a collaborative approach of multiple people. To put together some more storyboards that include those statistics on some of the what our jail population has been, both male and female, and how it's changed from 2008 to now, and then projections as to looking at, okay, what kind of needs, what kind of program may we need, depending on the population, things like that. So we'll be adding some storyboards as we go forward. I've asked that we get those done by the July 26th event. So we'll have more, but that's a good idea. But that's where the questions and the give and take back and forth with the folks that come out to these events, and we can talk to them about any questions they have.
Okay.
So any other questions?
I have one. So when our former Sheriff Dave Brand was at the sheriff's office, he came up with many innovative ways to fund his programs. When you're coming up with the needs, do you talk about potential ways to fund what you want to do?
I think at this point we're identifying the needs, and then one of the things that we're doing actually in CJCC, and you'll be hearing about it at a working session for the budget. I've put together a comprehensive budget proposal that includes programs and plans and existing programs that are for persons in the criminal justice system. So, but I think all of us on the committee, I know I am kind of like, well, let's start talking about how are we going to do this? How are we going to fund it? But we're being told, and that I think that's why Tom Weber's a good facilitator. Just think about the needs. What are, identifying the needs, and don't jump to the program planning yet, because we already have quite a bit of programs already, as you said. I mean, Dave, former Sheriff Dave Brand had some good programs going. We have good programs now in the jail, and so things exist, but the needs assessment, I think, looks at what do we have existing in programs and in facility, and also what are the facilities needs, because I mean, you've all taken a tour of the jail, you've seen it, and you'll see, with these pictures. But then also of the existing programs we have, what if, are there any other needs that we have? And, it's kind of like, what do we all wish for Christmas? You don't always get everything you want, but you certainly can identify those needs, and then start, and that would be, we would be presenting to the board then a needs assessment report. And then you would make a decision as to, based on that report, what's the next step, as is identified again in the website description of the advisory committee. Do nothing, remodel, continued reliance on regional partners.
Could I mention one thing?
Yeah.
Again, this is not an item on the agenda, and I think
Yeah,
we're going.
that's right. Thank you.
We're making the habit of going really far afield on things that everyone has the right to know if it's in a published agenda.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Commissioner Pomeroy. I really, just wanted to let you know about these events that are coming up, and please, if you can make a couple, great. If you're wandering around the county fair, stop in and see what we're doing. So
You will have to take those to outside the city of Winona at some point. They'll have to be traveling boards.
And that's why I want to take it to the township officers. I know Commissioner Kavesi had mentioned that they were really interested at the last meeting, I think. I thought about maybe taking it up to Lewiston and St. Charles, the libraries there, or the library in St. Charles. But, right, we want
Community
countywide
meetings,
coverage.
Yeah,
Yes.
community meetings outside the city of Winona.
Yeah, believe me, that's on my
Your list.
thought. Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Great. Downtown.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to take so much time.
That's all right. Good stuff. Thank you. Commissioner.
Okay, I had just two quick things. I just wanted to bring the board up to date on Engage Winona, the project involving youth mental health. They've completed over 200 interviews, or they've compiled data from 200 interviews, and there's still more data coming in. So they've been spending time sitting with small groups of youth, grades 8 to 12, and asking open-ended questions regarding well, one of the questions that has been bringing some really interesting answers is, what one thing would you like adults to know about you? So we went over some of those the other day. So there's going to be more coming out of it when it's done. But the youth are very engaged and telling us what they want us to hear. We know youth suicides have been increasing, and so that's just been a factor related to this of what the Winona community could or might be doing about those things. So we went to the youth first to find out what they wanted to have in that kind of a plan. The other one was a meeting this morning that Commissioner Ward and I were able to attend on the SHIP program, the State Health Improvement Program. And again, they're just starting. We had a brainstorming meeting. It was a wide community base. They did a very good start, I thought. And the group will next take it to priority setting and develop the State Health Improvement Plan for Winona County. So far we've been talking about healthy behaviors, healthy choices, and we're talking about how much opportunity we have to partner with programs already in the community. We talked about the crisis response team. We talked about a couple different programs that are ongoing and that we could perhaps help boost their, if we just made an awareness program about some of those things, that the resources would go a little further throughout the county. So I just wanted to let you know those couple things. I thought it was a good meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of different partners at the table, from small cities to schools.
Yes, school
to charter
districts.
schools,
Yeah.
Health. Good. All right. Any other further business to come before the Winona County Board? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. I let it
Motion
go.
by Commissioner Kavissa, second by Commissioner Olson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We're adjourned.